The forest has always been my sanctuary, a place where I can truly be alone. That's why I love solo camping. This particular trip, I ventured deeper than ever before, miles from the nearest town, miles from any sign of human life. The silence was profound, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a distant bird. It was perfect. The first few days were a blur of peaceful solitude hiking, reading by the fire, and just soaking in the quiet. The world felt a million miles away. But then came the third morning. It was cold, the kind of damp chill that seeps into your bones. I unzipped my tent, and that's when I saw it. Sitting on a flat stone, just a few feet away, was a cup of tea. It wasn't just any cup. It was a simple ceramic mug, the kind you might find in an old cabin, and it was still warm. Steam was coiling from its surface, disappearing into the morning mist. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had made it. My own camping mug and stove were still packed away inside the tent. I scanned the area, my eyes darting between the trees. There were no footprints in the soft, damp earth around the cup. No snap twigs, no sign that anyone had been there. Just that single, steaming cup of tea, an impossible, silent offering in the middle of nowhere. Who would bring a cup of tea to a stranger in the deep woods? And how could they have left without a single trace? A primal fear I'd never known took hold. The peace I'd felt just moments before was shattered, replaced by a chilling sense of being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. I didn't touch the cup. I didn't even get closer. I scrambled back into my tent, my hands shaking as I packed my gear. I didn't care about being neat. I just threw everything into my bag. The feeling of unseen eyes on my back was overwhelming. One had to get out of there. The hike back to my car was the longest of my life. I kept looking over my shoulder, convinced I was being followed. The forest, which had once felt like a welcoming embrace, now felt like a cage, its trees like the bars of a cell, all watching me. When I finally reached my car and slammed the door shut, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But the relief was short-lived. During the long drive home, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling. Every car that appeared in my rear-view mirror felt like a pursuer. Every flicker of movement at the edge of the road made me jump. The feeling of being followed didn't stay in the forest. It came home with me. For a week, I lived in a state of quiet paranoia. I double-checked the locks on my doors at night. The slightest noise outside my window would send my heart racing. Was I losing my mind? Had I imagined the whole thing? The logical part of my brain screamed that there had to be an explanation, another camper, a prankster, but the gut feeling, the cold dread, told me it was something else. I had to know. I couldn't live with the uncertainty. So, a week later, against all better judgment, I drove back. I needed to find answers, or at least prove to myself that it had been real. I parked in the same spot and hiked the same trail, my senses on high alert. When I finally arrived at the clearing, my heart sank. It was completely empty. The flat stone where the cup had sat was bare. There was no sign of the mug, no disturbed ground, nothing. It looked as if no one had ever been there. As if the forest itself had conspired to erase every trace of what happened, swallowing the secret whole. I left that day with more questions than answers, and with a profound new respect for the woods. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some places hold secrets that they're not willing to give up. I still go camping, but I don't go as deep into the woods anymore. And every time I make a cup of tea, I can't help but look over my shoulder, wondering about the one that was left for me. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had a strange or unexplainable experience in the great outdoors, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the wild. Stay safe out there. My girlfriend, Clara, and I have always been adventurers. We love the thrill of the unknown, the whisper of the wind through the pines, the crackle of a campfire under a blanket of stars. So for our third anniversary, we decided to return to our favorite spot, a remote campground tucked deep in the heart of the national forest. It was a place where we'd made some of our best memories. But this time, things were different. We arrived late Friday afternoon, and an ominous silence greeted us. The sky was a bruised purple, and the air was heavy with the smell of rain. A massive storm had just torn through the area. The park ranger had told us over the phone, but he'd assured us the main road was clear. He wasn't wrong, but what he failed to mention was that we would be the only ones there. The entire campground, usually bustling with families and fellow hikers, was completely deserted. Not a single tent, not a single RV, just us. At first, the solitude felt romantic. "We have the whole forest to ourselves," Clara said, her smile lighting up the gloomy evening. We pitched our tent in our usual spot, a secluded little nook surrounded by a thick grove of ancient oak trees. We built a small fire, cooked our dinner, and shared a bottle of wine, reminiscing about the day we first met. As darkness fell, the woods came alive with the familiar sounds of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. It was peaceful. It was perfect. But as the night deepened, a strange feeling began to creep over me, a primal sense of being watched. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the wine or the eerie quiet. We doused the fire and zipped ourselves into the tent, snuggling into our sleeping bags. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, and unnatural. Not even the crickets were chirping anymore. That's when we heard it, a soft, rhythmic crunching of leaves just outside the tent. Step, step. It sounded like someone was walking in slow, deliberate circles around us. My heart leaped into my throat. I looked at Clara, and her eyes were wide in the darkness, mirroring my own terror. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, putting a finger to my lips, straining to listen. The footsteps continued, circling, never stopping, never getting closer or farther away. Then came the whispers. Faint, raspy sounds like the rustling of dry leaves, but they had a cadence, a rhythm that felt disturbingly human. They were too low to make out any words, but the intent felt malicious. It sounded like multiple voices, all whispering at once, weaving a web of sound around our fragile nylon shelter. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, my knuckles white. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The footsteps stopped. The whispering ceased. The silence that rushed back in was even more terrifying. We stayed frozen for what felt like an eternity, barely daring to breathe. Every gust of wind, every snap of a twig sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Then a new sound started. A soft, wet scraping against the side of the tent. Scra up, scra up. It was slow, methodical, like a long fingernail being dragged across the fabric, right next to where Clara's head was. That was it. That was our breaking point. "We have to go. Now," I said, my voice a strangled hiss. We didn't even think about packing. In a frantic, clumsy scramble, we unzipped the tent and burst out into the pitch-black woods. I didn't look back. I just grabbed Clara's hand and we ran. We sprinted through the trees, branches whipping at our faces, our feet stumbling over roots we couldn't see. The only thing that mattered was the car. We finally reached the parking lot, our lungs burning, and fumbled for the keys. I threw open the door, shoved Clara inside, and jumped into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely get the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into drive, peeling out of the gravel lot. As we sped away, a morbid curiosity I couldn't resist made me glance in the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it. Back in the darkness, between the trees where our tent was, a faint, sickly green light was glowing. It wasn't a flashlight or a lantern. It pulsed softly, a nauseating color that didn't belong in nature. It was just there, in the spot where we had been moments before, a silent testament to the thing we had just escaped. We drove for hours, not saying a single word. The sun was rising by the time we reached the outskirts of our city. We never went back for our tent or any of our gear. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened that night. I don't know who or what was circling our tent, what was whispering in the darkness, or what that eerie green light was. But I know with every fiber of my being that we were not alone in that empty campground, and we ran from something we were never, ever meant to see. Thanks for listening to my story. It's one I don't tell often, but I felt I had to share it. If you have any similar experiences, I'd love to read them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing for more strange tales. Stay safe out there. The mountains hold a lot of secrets. Some beautiful, some not so much. I learned this the hard way when I was 14. My family decided it would be a great idea to go camping, way up in the woods, and they let me bring my best friend, Alex. We were thrilled. The days were spent hiking and swimming in the freezing cold mountain stream, but the nights were our favorite. As soon as the sun went down and the adults settled around the campfire, we'd grab our flashlights and venture into the woods. It was our little ritual, a test of bravery. We'd tell ghost stories, trying to scare each other, laughing when one of us jumped at the snap of a twig. On the third night, something felt different. The air was heavier, colder. The usual chorus of crickets and frogs was strangely silent. We'd walked further than usual, our flashlight beams cutting through the thick, inky blackness. That's when we first heard it, a whisper. It was faint like the rustle of leaves, but it had a human quality to it. We stopped dead in our tracks, straining to listen. It came again from all around us, a soft, sibilant sound that seemed to slither through the trees. It wasn't calling a name, just whispering. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. Alex grabbed my arm, his knuckles white. Did you hear that? He breathed, his voice trembling. I could only nod, my throat too tight to speak. We swept our flashlights in wide arcs, the beams dancing nervously over the ancient trees and tangled undergrowth. Then my light caught something, movement, low to the ground. We both froze, pointing our lights at the same spot. There, crawling on the forest floor, was a woman. Her clothes were tattered and caked with dirt. She moved slowly, almost like an animal, her long, matted hair obscuring her face. We called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She stopped crawling and slowly lifted her head. In the harsh glare of our flashlights, her skin looked unnaturally pale, almost gray, stretched taut over her bones. She mumbled something, her voice raspy and broken. "Lost," she whispered, the sound echoing the strange noises we'd heard earlier. So lost. A wave of fear, colder and sharper than anything I'd ever felt, washed over me. This wasn't just a lost hiker. Something was profoundly wrong. Without another word, we turned and ran. We didn't stop until we burst back into the warm, comforting glow of our campsite, our hearts hammering against our ribs. We didn't tell our parents. How could we? They'd think we were making it up. We tried to forget about it, telling ourselves it was just a trick of the shadows, our imaginations running wild. But the next night, the feeling of being watched was unbearable. The air grew cold again, the silence pressing in. We stayed close to the fire this time, but it didn't matter. The whispering returned. It was closer, much closer. It sounded like it was right at the edge of the campsite, just beyond the ring of light. It was louder now, more insistent, weaving in and out of the crackle of the fire. I could feel the hairs on my arms stand up. Alex and I exchanged a terrified look. She was here? I felt a compulsion, an irresistible urge to turn around to look into the darkness behind me. I told myself not to, screamed at myself internally to stay facing the fire. But it was like my body wasn't my own. Slowly I turned my head, and she was there, not crawling on the ground, but standing, right in front of me, barely a foot away. Her face was inches from mine. The image is burned into my memory forever. Her skin was like old parchment, and her eyes, they weren't eyes. They were just black, hollow pits, voids that seemed to suck in all the light and all the hope in the world. As I stared into that emptiness, her lips peeled back from her teeth in a silent snarl. And then everything went dark. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the ground and Alex was shaking me, his face pale with panic. My parents were rushing over. Alex said I just screamed and collapsed. He said there was nothing there when he looked. They decided I must have had a panic attack or fainted from exhaustion. They packed everything up in a hurry that morning, cutting the trip short. We left the mountains and never looked back. It's been years, but sometimes when it's quiet at night, I can still hear it. A faint whispering on the edge of my hearing. I have never gone camping again. I never will. Some things you see in the woods are meant to stay there, and some things, they follow you home. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have your own chilling encounters you'd like to share, drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Tales from the Dark. Stay safe out there.